All right, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'll call to order this meeting of the Assembly Enterprise and Utility Oversight Committee meeting of the whole. If we could go ahead and call the roll.
Yes, ma'am. Miss Allard?
Here.
Constant?
Mr. Constance excused and traveling.
Okay, Mr. Dunbar?
Here.
Miss Kennedy?
Here.
Miss LaFrance?
Here.
Mr. Prosperdia?
Here.
Mr. Peterson?
Present.
Miss Quinn Davidson?
Here.
Mr. Rivera?
Present.
Mr. Weddleton? And Miss Zalatel?
Here.
You have quorum.
Thank you very much. So we have a full agenda today. I'm going to skip introductions, but as we get to each agenda item, if whoever's presenting can just introduce themselves. 4 items for new business, and we're going to start with peer review of the Port of Alaska Modernization Program. Ms. Hickel, are you on today to lead us through this item?
Yes, ma'am, I am on. However, we're going to have Jacobs Engineering, David Ames. He's going to do the presentation.
Fantastic. Welcome, Mr. Ames, and you may go ahead.
Thank you very much. As Colby mentioned, my name is David Ames. I'm with the Jacobs Program Management Team, and I'm here to speak on this issue. As you know, the preliminary engineering for the phase 2 of the cargo docks is moving ahead right now. The mayor's office has requested a due diligence review, basically, that focuses primarily on the phasing of the program and the permitting plan of the program. A proposal has been submitted by GHD, a firm that very well known in the maritime world and has also had some involvement in the design of the petroleum and cement terminal. They did a review of the seismic design that the chief designer Cowie did, so they are familiar with the project. The purpose of this review is to actually just provide a due diligence of the phasing and of the permitting strategy to make sure that we are squeezing as much as we can out of the schedule and tightening up the schedule as much as possible. The technical work will be continuing onward. I think we at Jacobs have spent a lot of time working on this plan, and we're confident that it will stand review, but we will also certainly welcome a peer review to help us squeeze as much as we can out of it as we enter into phase 2. So we see this as a collaborative effort. It's about a 6 to 8 week study by GHD, and it will be a collaborative effort with Jacobs. The fee that GHD has proposed is $77,500 for the effort, and it will run in parallel to the technical work we are doing. The most important thing is that it will not stop the schedule, only hopefully improve it. Okay. If you would like to see the proposal letter, I can put it up on the screen.
I think that's okay. We had this item in an assembly agenda, and we wanted to have this opportunity to explore how this would work with the current plans underway at the port. Okay. I'm actually the one who pulled the item so that we could talk about it here today. Sure. And so I'm happy to hear it won't change the technical side, and it will possibly just enhance that. And does the peer review have any intersection with the design commission?
Well, there are actually 2 reviews going on under our current contract. We also have an independent technical review that goes on as we are doing the preliminary, or as we are continuing the preliminary design effort. That effort is actually in procurement now and will start most likely in March. That will interact substantially with the design advisory board. We haven't made any specific plans to include this study in with the design advisory board, simply because it's mostly focused on phasing and permitting strategies, trying to squeeze the schedule down. But we certainly can if we think it's useful.
Great, thank you for that information. Do any other members have questions on the port modernization peer review? You can pop yourself in the chat and for the queue. Well, I am not seeing any additional questions, so thank you for taking the time out to explain how this fits in the overall strategy for the port modernization. It's very much appreciated, and as that moves forward, we look forward to discussing the outcomes of the peer review. Mr. Rebuffo, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I think David did a great job of summarizing where we stand on this. No shortage of opportunities to get a second set of eyes on this program. So we welcome every opportunity we can have to do that. It's a big, expensive, very important project. So we may get some good ideas out of this. It's worth the time.
Yeah, and I think the most important thing is that if it can be done without affecting the schedule as we move forward in any negative way, all the better, right?
All right, well, fantastic. Thank you both for the updates, and I very much appreciate it. With that, we'll conclude this item and move on to our next item. The next item on the agenda is Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. I do not know, Mr. Constant, as the chair of this committee, set this item. I don't know much about it. Is there someone prepared to present on this item? If not, we will just hold it over to next month. My guess is Mr. Constant had something particular in mind, and that's okay because we have plenty of other items to cover on the agenda. So if there's no objection, I'll go ahead and move on to item C. This is Ordinance 2021-119. Discussion. This is an ordinance authorizing a ground lease between the Anchorage Community Development Authority and 6th Avenue Center LLC. This item is in the Assembly's packet for the December 21st meeting, and Mr. Weddleton had requested a work session, so in having this meeting already set, reached out to Mr. Robbins at Anchorage Community Development Authority. So I'm going to turn the floor over to him to give us some background information, and then welcome members to ask any questions about this item. Mr. Robbins, you may go ahead. Thank you. I believe you're still on mute.
Only done 1,000 Zoom meetings. I apologize for not remembering to unmute myself. So thank you very much. So we are here asking for you to take a look at and approve the ground lease between ourselves and our developer group so that we can move ahead with the 6th Avenue project. I think that many of the members are very familiar with the project as it was approved. There was a ground lease previously approved with a different developer group, and that project didn't happen, and a new development group came forward and asked to pick the project up. We've been working diligently for the last year to assemble a development agreement and a ground lease that we believe is in the favor of the municipality. And so we're here today to just answer any questions that you may have. I think that we at ACDA believe it's a very good project. We believe it's commercially reasonable, economically viable, and that the current development group has the ability to bring the project across the finish line. So with that, I guess if there's any questions, we'll be glad to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Robbins. We'll start with Mr. Dunbar in the queue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So two things, Mike. So first, I noticed that there was a labor peace agreement, which I'm really happy about, and I'm wondering if you give us any details on that. And then second, I believe this project originally had kind of a unique modular design and construction, and I'm wondering if that is also contemplated by this development group, or if they are planning a more traditional, construction method.
Thank you for your questions, Member Dunbar. So the labor peace agreement was signed between the developer and the union, and that was done, I think they completed that 3 months ago. And it was something that the assembly had asked for and that the developer agreed to, and it's been executed. As far as the design goes, if I may, Larry Cash is on the line with us, and I'd like to have Larry speak to the design and what the actual project would look like, if that's okay with everyone.
Yes, that'd be fine. Please go ahead, Mr. Cash.
Thank you, Mr. Robbins and Mr. Dunbar, for your question. And the project that we are proposing is basically a continuation of the project as proposed by the previous developer. And it does continue to contemplate utilization of the modular construction system for delivery of the project through the construction process here in Anchorage. So yes, modular construction is still anticipated.
Can I ask a quick follow-up to that, Madam Chair?
Of course.
So thank you, Mr. Cash. And so my understanding is that modular construction method, be predominantly built somewhere else, the sort of the modular pieces. And can you remind me where that's going to be done? And then I know we have supply chain issues. Has, delivery of those kind of completed modular units been impacted by the supply chain issues, or are we still too early for that to really be anticipated?
So thank you, Mr. Dunbar. It's still too early in the process because we have, I guess, weathered the storm of the pandemic in the meantime. And, at the time when the previous developer, their process was suspended, the modules were anticipated to be constructed somewhere offshore. Most likely it would have occurred in China, but had not been, finalized. And that's still the case. We are anticipating competitive proposals from a number of sources and locations who have expertise in this type of construction, and that would occur as we go forward.
Thank you, Mr. Cash. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Dunbar. I've placed myself in the queue. This question is for Mr. Robbins. I noticed in this lease that there appears to be an assignment provision that's not typical for ACDA leases. Usually those leases are not assignable. Could you talk a little bit about why that's different in this situation?
Thank you, Chairman Zalatel. So I'm not sure which version of the lease which you're looking at. The previous lease that was approved by the Assembly did have an assignment provision in there, and the lease that's being proposed now also contains assignment provisions. And the reason that those are in there is because the developers have to go and obviously generate commercial financing, generate investment, and most developers are not operators, and so they will develop a property and then operate it for some period of time, and then there usually is an exit plan. Now that's not something that we've discussed because it's really not part of the process right now, but it's important that for financing reasons and for investment relation reasons that we have that the developers have the ability to assign that lease based on approval of the ACDA Board of Directors and Management.
Thank you for that explanation. I believe we have Municipal Attorney Bowman on the line as well. Mr. Bowman, would you like to weigh in as well?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just wanted to clarify, I believe that you and the rest of the Assembly have in front of you the memorandum which was submitted with this ordinance. And those might be the terms upon which you are discussing, the assignment provision specifically. And I wanted to clarify for the chair and for the committee that the terms as expressed in the Assembly Memorandum is merely a term sheet. It is not the exact form of the lease. And so that assignment provision as described in the AM is not the final form of the assignment provision as it would appear in the lease.
Okay, very good. So I have a follow-up question. In previous assignments in ACDA ground leases, has that power generally rested with the ACDA board to approve, or is that something different in this situation?
Is that for myself or Mr. Bowman?
Either, if either of you know.
Maybe I could ask Melinda, since I've been here a short period of time. We started in July. This is the first ground lease I've been involved with, but my understanding is that the ground lease, for example, that we have for the 8th and K project doesn't have any assignment language in it because we still own the ground. They're just simply leasing it, but I could be wrong. Melinda, would you like to weigh in on that?
No, Mike, you're absolutely right. We do have another ground lease in place, which is our 96 flat block property with the Debenham project. And it is a standard assignment language and names ACDA as basically the holder of that. And really ACDA and the ACDA Board of Directors as the holder of that.
Thank you for that clarification. I am just looking to see if we have Mr. Weddleton on with us. I don't see him here, and I know that he may have, he had asked for a work session, so I hope we have covered what it is he wished to cover about the project. Is there anyone else who has questions? Ms. LaFrance.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a clarifying question. I'm looking at the attached AM that was submitted, and I'm assuming when we're referring to the assignment provision, that's on page 5, assignment and subletting. I know that the word assignment is referenced in at least one other place, but I just wanted to confirm it's page 5 on those lines 21 through 24 that we're referring to. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. That's what we're discussing now.
And again, through the chair, to clarify for Assemblyperson LaFrance, that is a general description of the assignment provision which might appear in the ground lease, the final form of which has not been agreed upon yet between ACDA, the developer, and the administration. So that's a general description. It does not reflect the actual contract term.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. LaFrance. Last call on anything related to the ACDA ground lease at this time. Mr. Cash, Mr. Robbins, do you have anything or any concluding remarks?
I would just like to say that I urge you to support this memorandum and the AO and the MO, because I think that this is a good project. I think it's going to have a serious impact on that area of the city. I think that it's going to be a beautiful building when it's done. I think we're going to have a great location for the transit center. I think it's just going to be fantastic, and I urge you to support it.
Great. Oh, yes, Mr. Cash.
And I don't have anything to add to what Mr. Robbins has just said. We, as a development team, would really much appreciate your support of this ground lease so that we can go build a project.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Cash. And this item will be before the Assembly on Tuesday night, the 21st. So next on our agenda is other business. The other business before us today is an opportunity if the administration would like to address the recent item in the news around the AWU fluoridation issue that has been very much on everyone's radar and wanted to make some space here because it is a utility. If Ms. Domboski, thank you, turned her camera on just as I was looking for who may want to do that, would like to address that and then provide an opportunity if there's the possibility for any questions. Please go ahead, Ms. Domboski.
Well, I will just say that clearly the mayor has said he took a tour. He had complaints by employees and a request to turn off the fluoride. He took a pause and he came back. We discussed it and it was turned back on because we felt the appropriate mechanism to make a decision on fluoridation would be in a public arena with the assembly. At no time was city code violated. The fluoridation levels, which we have water logs to prove, never dipped below any sort of code requirement. So there was no diminishment, significant or measurable diminishment in the fluoridation levels at any time on October 1st.
Thank you, Ms. Domboski. I want to note for the record at 11:20, we are joined by Mr. Weddleton. Given that Mr. Weddleton has joined us, we're not going to hop backwards yet, but Mr. Robbins and Mr. Cash, please stay on the line. Mr. Weddleton, we just finished covering the ACDA lease, but I will make space for you. It looks like we'll have time for you to ask any questions. But first, let's finish this item up. Thank you, Mr. Cash, for confirming you can stay. Mr. Dunbar, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Domboski. I have a couple of quick questions. So you stated that there was a pause in the fluoridation. How was that pause achieved? So how practically and physically was that pause conducted?
I wasn't there, Mr. Dunbar, so I can't tell you how that was conducted.
Can you get us that information? Can the administration get us that information?
I'm trying to ask, are you asking how the system works? Or are you asking?
Yes, I'm asking.
If there's
so I'm asking, yeah, I'm asking who actually turned off the fluoridation.
It was not the mayor, I can tell you that.
Okay, I'm just asking, yeah, okay, great. So who and when, and yeah, I mean, any documentation you can provide us on that would be great, an answer there. And then, you mentioned these employee complaints, and I'm wondering, is there any documentation of those employee complaints?
Well, I will tell you, I wasn't there either, but the deputy municipal manager was there. And there were, from what I have been told, is there was multiple employees that were verbally talking about the eye irritation, the coughing, and just from handling the material. And that was the source of the concern of the mayor, wanting to ensure that we were taking adequate safety measures for our employees. That was the genesis of the concern. But again, as we discussed it, we were educated on the topic. It came back, and the decision was made that this is an appropriate discussion to have with the assembly and with the public before any long-term decisions were made. So again, there was no appreciable change in the fluoridation levels of the water.
Okay, can we hear from the municipal manager? The deputy municipal manager, I believe, is here today. Can we hear directly from her then about that, what you just described?
Sure. Colby, can you describe how the complaints came to the mayor?
Sure. So Mark Corsentino, back in early of August, when I did a solo tour out there, he and I believe Brad and some of the other superintendents, and forgive me if I don't remember their names, they made it very clear to me that this chemical, even with the proper PPE on, it burned their eyes, it burned their throats, it irritated their skin. It is something that they don't like to deal with. And Mr. Corsentino came to me between August and this October 1st event multiple times, wanting to get in front of the mayor to discuss possibly not using fluoride. It would be a cost savings, but ultimately it would be a health improvement for his employees. And since I was there, I will tell you it was AWU staff that turned off the fluoride system. It was not the mayor. it was stated multiple times during this time that it would not break any state or federal regulations or charter. What they failed to mention was that it was actually in code. When we learned it was in code, Mr. Mayor and Ms. Domboski immediately ordered it to be turned back on. And we do have logs from even as of November that this fluoride system has been shut down for days on end for maintenance. And there's no public health hazard associated with that. And there's also times before October, you know, I'm sure we could find it, you know, for years that the system has been on, that it is shut down for days on end with no public health hazard.
And just to clarify, the system is routinely shut down for maintenance. That's what Ms. Hickle is referring to.
Yes.
So Ms. Hickle, you said that Mr. Corsentino asked you multiple times to turn off the fluoride or to stop using fluoride. Do you have any documentation of that? Are there any emails to that effect?
No, sir. These were verbal conversations, and this was one during the August 25th tour that he would like to not use it. It would be a cost savings for the company, and that also would be a health safety issue for them as well. And he did want me to talk to the mayor, but in between August and October, I never really had a chance to speak with him about it until we were actually in the car ride out there. And I said that this issue may come up, just wanted you to be aware. And then it was actually the staff, Mr. Corsentino, asked if that could happen.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Dunbar. I'm going to read some chat into the record from Ms. Quinn Davidson. Can Ms. Domboski or the attorney please forward us any Muni code sections that relate to fluoridation? I'm surprised to hear Ms. Domboski say Muni code was not violated, but I'm interested to read the code section myself. Thank you. Mr. Gates, Assembly Attorney replies, it is AMC 26.40.050.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. And now confirmed. Is there any other questions on this topic?
I guess I have one more.
Please go ahead.
And this might be for Mr. Corsentino. Is he here today?
He is not.
Okay. So if there was this issues with, again, question is for Ms. Hickle then. If there were these issues with eye irritation and burning and that kind of thing, have there been any discussions with OSHA? I mean, is there any?
I'll take that question. Mr. Dunbar, I will research that for you, and I will let you know if AWU has raised these issues previously, and I'll be happy to share that with you.
Thank you. And yeah, I'd requested shared with the full assembly. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Dunbar. Ms. Kennedy, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I would just like some clarification as well on what kind of protective measures have to be engaged when they are dealing with this chemical. I'm familiar with fluoride as well. I know that it's toxic to human beings. That's why you're not supposed to swallow your toothpaste. That's why they don't put it in children's toothpaste. So anyway, whatever kinds of procedures have to be followed in order to deal with that particular poisonous chemical would be interesting as well. So thank you.
We will get you some information, Ms. Kennedy. We'll get you their safety protocols.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Domboski. If you could send those through Desiree, that would be really helpful. It sounds like there's interest in those beyond one member. Anything further on this topic at this time? Okay, thank you, Ms. Hickle. Thank you, Ms. Domboski, for being here and discussing this with us. We will circle back if there are any additional questions on the ACDA ground lease. Mr. Weddleton, did you have any questions or would you just simply like to listen to the recording later on what we've already covered?
Yeah, I'll just listen to the recording. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Sorry,
Thank you, Mr. Robbins and Mr. Cash for sticking with us there. And I see Mr. Dunbar is in the queue. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I apologize. I have a couple more follow-ups on the last the last issue. So I guess 3 questions for Ms. Dombosky or Ms. Colby. So are the health and safety issues with the AWU employees ongoing? Have there been any changes, as a result of these issues with burning eyes and throats and what have you? And then will Mr. Corsentino be available to speak to us at some point in the near future? Thank you.
Thank you for those questions. And Mr. Dunbar, I'm happy to give you responses in writing.
Okay. Yeah, I would ask that it be sent to the full assembly. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sure, no problem. Thank you, Mr. Dunbar. Thank you, Ms. Dombosky. Okay. With that, I think I will ask, is there any other enterprise or utility business that needs to be brought before the committee today? All right, not hearing anything further. Next on our agenda is the committee legislative and budget priorities and other standing items. The first is a stormwater utility update. It is my understanding that that is on pause while there continues to be conversations about what that might look like. And I don't believe there's any additional update for today. It just remains a standing item on this committee's agenda. Are there any legislative priorities for the state legislative program that members would like to discuss? Okay, if you do have issues surrounding enterprises or utilities that we would like put forward as part of the state legislative program, feel free to email those to myself and Mr. Constant, and we will work on compiling those or through Ms. Camacho, and we will ensure that they are considered by Assembly leadership as that plan is put together. And next is budget items for 2023. I think that's perhaps ambitious at this point, but also just thinking forward as we consider the budget moving into first quarter budget revisions. I will highlight that I want to make space in this committee next month for us to review the solid waste services report on the composting program. As that is something I said I would like to review prior to first quarter budget revisions so that we can learn more about what the report says and how we could potentially move forward with that program. And then I think it's on everyone's radar as infrastructure dollars come through, how those could benefit the enterprise and utilities. And I think and some of that work was highlighted recently by the mayor's office with regard to the port. All right. Are there any committee member comments at this time before we turn to audience participation? Okay, I am not seeing any. For audience participation, if you would like to participate, you may do so. If you're on the phone, it's *6 to unmute, and you'll have 3 minutes. Would anyone like to participate? Anyone at all? All right. With that, we will look forward to the written information and those protocols being sent with regard to the handling of fluoride from the municipal manager's office. And I see no additional business on today's agenda, so everyone can get back their 25 minutes today. And I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, with that, we are adjourned. Happy holidays, everyone, and we will see you next year.